This is Right to Life Radio. And now, here's your host, John Gerardi.
All right, welcome to a Right to Life reaction video where I, John Gerardi, the Executive Director at Right to Life Essential California, react to some video clip about the abortion issue sprung upon me by producer Colton. I confess I was on vacation during the presidential debate last Tuesday. I hate watching the debates. I usually am able to get all the news I need from it after the fact, so I have not watched this exchange live. But there was an exchange between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris regarding abortion during the debate on Tuesday, September 10th. So we're going to play a clip of it, and what you're getting here is my live, honest-to-goodness, unfiltered reaction, having not reviewed, heard, read anything about this beforehand. This is my live reaction to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump discussing abortion during the debate. So here we go. Without further ado, I'm going to hit the play button right here.
I want to turn to the issue of abortion. President Trump, you've often touted that you were able to kill Roe v. Wade. Last year, you said that you were proud to be the most pro-life president in American history. Then last month, you said that your administration would be great for women and their reproductive rights. In your home state of Florida, you surprised many with regard to your 6-week abortion ban because you initially had said that it was too short. And you said,
with your 6-week abortion ban, Donald Trump had nothing to do with the 6-week abortion ban in Florida. That was passed by the Florida state legislature and signed into law by Governor DeSantis. And Trump criticized it heavily at the time, which is not to Trump's credit, by the way. I thought that was really not something I thought was great on President Trump's part.
I'm going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks. But then the very next day, you reversed course and said you would vote to support the 6-week ban. Vice President Harris says that women shouldn't.
That's not what the issue is in Florida. The issue in Florida is there's a ballot initiative, basically, on the ballot in Florida for a new Florida state constitutional amendment. The constitutional amendment in Florida would legalize abortion, I believe, effectively through fetal viability, and then after fetal viability for the sake of maternal health, which, again, the way that health, not again, I'm explaining it for the first time here, the way that health has been interpreted in Roe v. Wade and post-Roe v. Wade abortion statutes that allow abortion usually after fetal viability for the sake of maternal health. Health has always been interpreted in this extremely expansive way to include familial health, financial health, mental health, psychological health. And it's at the discretion of the doctor performing the abortion, the doctor who's financially incentivized to perform this abortion. And that comes from Doe versus Bolton, which was a Supreme Court decision issued on the same day as Roe v. Wade that gave this really expansive definition of health and what it means to have a health exception. You can ban abortion except for cases of maternal health. Well, what is health? Doe versus Bolton defined health in this incredibly broad way. It's so broad that it encompasses literally any pregnancy. So Trump isn't – the issue before voters in Florida is not necessarily the 6-week ban. It's whether to impose this new 40-week standard for abortion in Florida, and thereby to wipe out the 6-week standard. So they're kind of putting Trump in this unfair box. Trump seemingly doesn't want 6 weeks, but he also doesn't want 40 weeks. So, and they're acting like that's hypocritical on his part. I don't know that it's hypocritical on Trump's part, but even though I wish Trump were more vigorously pro-life and wanted more vigorous protection, but this is kind of a gotcha setup for President Trump.
Trust you on the issue of abortion because you've changed your position so many times. Therefore, why should they trust you?
Well, the reason I'm doing that vote is because the plan is, as you know, the vote is, they have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the...
Well, so what he's saying is basically the Democrats support abortion through the 9th month, and that's true. When you press a lot of Democrats, they will not say what restrictions on abortion, if any, they actually support. And what he's pointing out is that the law in Florida that's being proposed will effectively legalize abortion in the 9th month. Now, he's about to talk about he's about to talk about Governor Ralph Northam, the former governor of Virginia, not of West Virginia, who was very clear about basically if a child were to survive an abortion attempt, that they would just not provide resuscitative care to that child.
The current governor is doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical.
And Trump is highlighting this constantly. I think he understands that really late-term abortion is really unpopular, and he's, in spite of the fact that people are saying, well, the American people support legal abortion, they don't support third trimester abortion. You look at Americans' attitudes about abortion, and when you really drill in specifically about certain specific things, do you support public funding of abortion? Most Americans don't. Do you support abortion after the first trimester? Most Americans don't. Do you support abortion in the third trimester? Almost no Americans support that. And I think Trump is trying to position himself with these more popular abortion-related stances and to highlight the really extreme attitudes that the left takes to abortion. It's also highlighting this fact that a lot of NICUs, I think Trump's a little inaccurate when he says execute. I think what's more accurate is neglect. That what's happening in a lot of NICUs is that when a child is being diagnosed with some kind of disability in utero, or if a child survives an attempted late-term abortion, basically what's happening is not so much that children are being actively killed, but they are just not being provided basic care, basic resuscitative care, and it's being done on the basis of whether or not the child is wanted, not on the basis of whether or not the care would help. And this is really, I think, an epidemic throughout NICUs, throughout America, of just not providing this resuscitative care to children. And that's the thing that I think the extreme nature of Democrat politics is happening. Republicans have proposed time and again provisions to provide care, ordinary care for those children, and Democrats keep blocking it because they don't want to provide care to a child who survived an abortion. And I don't think Trump necessarily has the vocabulary or the intimate familiarity with this language to draw those kind of neat distinctions. But, he's an advertiser. He's not into neat distinctions like I am. I'm a lawyer. He's not. And again, he's won one more presidential election than I am. So maybe he knows what he's doing as far as messaging. But that's what's going on here.
The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote. But what I did is something for 52...
Trump is actually completely right about that. The legislation that Tim Walz signed into law in Minnesota removes these provisions for providing care for children who survive an abortion attempt and allows for basically, again, Trump is saying execution. What I'm saying that I think is more accurate, and maybe it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, is neglect, not providing the ordinary care that is necessary for children. It's more murder by omission than by commission.
Years they've been trying to get Roe v. Wade into the states, and through the genius and heart and strength of 6 Supreme Court justices, we were able to do that. Now, I believe in...
Well, I'd say 5 Supreme Court justices, but anyway, let's. John Roberts' opinion was the most weak, spineless thing ever. Anyway, let's just continue.
The exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. I believe strongly in it. Ronald Reagan did also. 85% of Republicans do. Exceptions. Very important. But we were able to get it, and now states are voting on it. And for the first time, you're going to see, look, this is an issue that's torn our country apart for 52 years. Every legal scholar, every Democrat, every Republican, liberal, conservative, they all wanted this issue to be brought back to the states where the people could vote.
I mean, respectfully, I'm glad that it's a state issue rather than what it was before. Before it was basically the justices of the Supreme Court saying, legal abortion is in the Constitution. And it completely shut the people out of the lawmaking process and imposed the worst set of abortion laws possible on all 50 states. And basically all 50 states, even the super pro-life states, had no ability to restrict abortion as such. Trump's just incorrect, though, that this is what Democrats wanted. They didn't want this. They wanted to impose legal abortion for all 40 weeks of pregnancy. They want to impose that on Texas. They want to impose that on Alabama. They want to impose that on Louisiana, all these super pro-life states that have restricted abortion. They wanted to impose that. And liberal legal scholars did not want Roe v. Wade overturned. They like the policy outcome. So, I mean, I don't know that it's that important one way or another, but, I wish more of them wanted I wish more of them wanted Roe v. Wade overturned. I thought Roe v. Wade was terrible. But I just don't think that's descriptively accurate on Trump's part. But he keeps saying it constantly, and I can tell it's absolutely driving people insane on the left, certainly, because they absolutely did not want Roe v. Wade overturned.
And that's what happened. Now, Ohio, the vote was somewhat liberal. Kansas?
No, that puts it mildly. The vote in Ohio was horribly liberal.
The vote was somewhat liberal, much more liberal than people would have thought. But each individual state is voting. It's the vote of the people now. It's not tied up in the federal government. I did a great service in doing it. It took courage to do it. And the Supreme Court had great courage in doing it. And I give tremendous credit to those 6 justices.
5.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born.
So, yeah, we're just going to do the work for Kamala Harris here. I didn't realize this woman was part of the debate. That's odd. Shouldn't Kamala Harris jump in and do that? Again, though, this is the problem with Trump not being precise about it. When Trump's saying execute, you assume that means like active killing. What Trump is trying to say, trying to point out, which is true, is what's happening in these states is they're removing penalties for failure to provide ordinary care to children who survive an abortion, or to what's happening a lot in NICUs is children who have a disability who are born who just aren't being provided care, are just allowed to die, children who could survive, children with things like spina bifida. So this is the problem, is that the media is able to play on Trump's lack of precision to argue, oh, Donald Trump doesn't know what he's talking. Donald Trump's wrong.
Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I said, you're going to hear a bunch of lies, and that's not actually a surprising fact. Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court.
Do other presidents not hand-select their Supreme Court justices? Nah, I just, just picking random lawyers. Like, yeah, I'm pretty sure Barack Obama had he didn't have a producer Colton's like throwing a dart at a dartboard. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Barack Obama didn't just open up the bar registry and just flip through. Kagan. Oh, okay, I'll pick her. No, whatever.
The intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade.
And every Democrat president picks their Supreme Court justices to ensure that they would uphold Roe v. Wade. Like, what are we talking about here?
They did exactly as he intended. And now
every Democrat Supreme Court justice does exactly what their Democrat presidential appointer wants them to do. Every president picks their Supreme Court justices hoping that they'll do what they want. That's the point. It's an insanity that Republican presidents had such a terrible batting average with their Supreme Court justices. Like half of them turn out to be crazy liberals, like Anthony Kennedy and David Souter and Sandra Day O'Connor. But yeah, Democrat Supreme Court picks do exactly what the Democrat president who appoints them wants.
In over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal.
They're not Trump abortion. I mean, this is obviously marketing on Harris's part, and maybe it's probably smart. But again, these are laws passed by the state legislatures of those states and signed by the governors, and more extreme than what Donald Trump even wants. Donald Trump's disclaimed wanting abortion bans more harsh than 6 weeks.
for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime, a violation to their body, does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is
Let's deal with rape and incest exceptions. Again, any instance of sexual assault is horrible. Like, absolutely every single one needs to be dealt with. Two things, though. One, the unborn child is also a meaningful person here. And Harris refuses to acknowledge that. She's not even going to touch that. I understand that. Two, though, is the messaging she's doing, which the pro-choice side has done so effectively, to make rape and incest, which, again, every instance of it is horrible, every instance of it is serious. I'm not undermining it. It is only 1% or so of all abortions. We're just gliding past the other 99%. So is abortion just okay in those 99% because of the 1%? That doesn't make any sense.
moral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care.
This is such a lie, this lie about, oh, you're having a miscarriage, you can't get care. That is an absolute lie that the pro-abortion side has been pushing to try to make their side seem more sympathetic. There is no state that has done anything to restrict care for someone who has a miscarriage. There's this deliberate muddying of the waters to try to argue that somehow receiving care for someone who's had a miscarriage is somehow restricted by state abortion laws. It's just completely untrue.
In an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy.
Again, we're going to the most extreme example to justify the other 99%. But again, it's also, we're mischaracterizing what's going on here. We're mischaracterizing the medical situations that could arise. The premature delivery for someone who's suffering that kind of a miscarriage late is just as, if not more, indicated than active abortion, because premature delivery can happen much more quickly, especially via a C-section, can happen much more quickly than a late-stage abortion can. So I think this is just wrong in the science, it's wrong in the law, it's wrong on everything.
The term? They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
I am sure she will, and that would be a disaster if that happens. So what Harris wants to do, there's a bill that Congress has been batting back and forth during the Biden era that Democrats never quite had the votes for, basically to take the provisions of Roe v. Wade, and Roe v. Wade said legal abortion under this structure is part of the Constitution. They want to basically just pass a federal law saying abortion has to be legal for all 9 months pregnancy, legal after viability for a health reason. So effectively 9-month legal abortion. Pass it just as a federal law, passed by the House, the Senate, signed by the president, and that would override all the state laws that have been passed since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. I'm sure that's what Harris wants to do.
But understand, if Donald Trump were to be reelected, he will sign a national abortion ban. Understand, in his Project 2025, there would be a...
This is like two lies back to back. First, Trump explicitly said he wouldn't sign a national abortion ban. So I wish he would, but he explicitly said he wouldn't, or Vance explicitly said he wouldn't. Secondly, his Project 2025. Project 2025 is a series of policy proposals written by the Heritage Foundation saying this is the kind of stuff that a new Republican presidential administration should pursue. The Trump campaign didn't produce it. They've disclaimed it multiple times. They said they have nothing to do with it. I wish they had something to do with it because I think everything Project 2025 has to say about abortion is great. But this is just back-to-back lies by Harris, and you'll note she's not going to be challenged for either of them by the ABC moderators. I'm sure. I'm guessing anyway.
National abortion, a monitor that would be monitoring your pregnancies, your miscarriages. I think
this national abortion monitor stuff is total nonsense. What they're saying, what Project 2025 is asking for, which I think would be an unqualifiedly good thing, is for every state to actually report their abortion figures to the CDC. That's what she's talking about. Most states do this already, including Tim Walz's Minnesota. California doesn't, though, and a couple of other states. They just refuse to report their abortion figures to the CDC. We should have good, accurate numbers about the numbers of abortion that are happening in America, especially for states that are using public money to fund it. California public policy is largely flying blind when it comes to abortion because the CDC doesn't collect any information, or rather, California refuses to give any information about abortion numbers to the CDC. That's why all of our estimates about the numbers of abortion in America are, it's largely, a lot of it is kind of guesswork and best guess estimates, because here's the largest state in the union, 40 million people, and they don't report their abortion figures. So it's not a national abortion monitor. That's total nonsense. The information that's being gathered is gathered on an anonymized basis. And again, it's being gathered right now from states like Minnesota, where Tim Walz has completely rewritten the book on abortion law in that state. So it's sheer nonsense from Harris.
American people believe that certain freedoms, in particular the freedom to make decisions about one's own body.
There's another body involved. Again, this is just classic pro-choice argumentation. But again, it isn't purely a question of one's own bodily autonomy. There is another human being involved.
Should not be made by the government.
Thank you, Vice.
The idea that these decisions should not be made by the government just infuriates me. This idea that Raphael Warnock, the senator from Georgia, does this all the time. I think a doctor's office is too small for a woman, her doctor, and the government. The government regulates the practice of medicine all the time. The government steps in to protect vulnerable people all the time. This idea, the government shouldn't be involved. This is the one area of medicine, apparently, where the Democrats don't want government involvement. The government should be involved to protect vulnerable human beings from being killed. Sorry. That's kind of the baseline thing government should exist for. Even like extreme libertarians, like the one thing they say that the government should do is, prevent homicides. So, the government should be involved. It's just a question of whether or not you acknowledge the humanity or the importance, the personhood, the whatever word you want to use, that if you want to qualify unborn children as belonging to the community of humans who matter and who deserve protection under law. That's the crux of it, and Harris is just operating from a different set of premises than Trump or than pro-lifers are, to say, no, unborn children are not part of the community of persons who deserve protection under law.
President Harris.
Well, there she goes again. It's a lie. I'm not signing a ban, and there's no reason to sign a ban because we've...
Yeah, and here's Trump saying, I'm not going to sign a ban.
...gotten what everybody...
This, by the way, this is Trump doing the fact-checking that allegedly the moderators are supposed to be doing.
...wanted. Democrats, Republicans, and everybody else, and every legal scholar wanted it to be brought back into the states, and the states are voting. And it may take a little time, but for 52 years, this issue has torn our country apart, and they've wanted it back in the states. And I did.
Democrats don't want it in the states. They don't want Alabama and Texas to protect unborn life. They want the federal government to impose it. I kind of wish Trump were right. Really, what I wish is that this wasn't up to a vote. I wish that protection of all human life was imposed on the whole country. I don't think they should be killing babies in New York and California. But, I just think it's wishful thinking on Trump's part, or just wishful messaging on Trump's part. Maybe he's trying to get to the middle the moderate middle voters, the 20,000 Pennsylvanians who are going to decide the fate of the whole country. But yeah, I mean, I kind of wish he were right, but I don't think he is.
Something that nobody thought was possible. The states are now voting. What she says is an absolute lie. And as far as the abortion ban, no, I'm not in favor of abortion ban, but it doesn't matter because this issue has now been taken over by the states.
Would you veto a national abortion ban if it came to
Well, I
your
won't
desk?
have to because, again, two things. Number one, she said she'll go back to Congress. She'll never get the vote. It's impossible for her to get the vote, especially.
It's possible. The Democrats could just change the filibuster rules in the Senate, and I believe they will do it to impose a nationwide abortion law. I really believe they'll do it. So I don't think he's right there.
Now with the 50-50, and essentially 50-50 in both Senate and the House, she's not going to get the vote. She can't get the vote. She won't even come close to it. So it's just talk. You know what it reminds me of when they said they're going to get...
I mean, he may be right that it's just talk. I mean, if the Senate's too narrowly divided, the Democrats may not have the votes to actually abolish the filibuster rule in the Senate. But I don't know. I mean, 49 out of 51 Democrat senators just a few years ago were in favor of, overturning the filibuster rule for the sake of, their voting rights bill. Democrats want to get stuff done. They want to get rid of the filibuster rule to get their priorities done, and I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
Student loans terminated, and it ended up being a total catastrophe. The student loans, and then
all right,
her,
now we're going
I
into
think
student
probably
loans.
Her boss,
Okay,
if you call him a boss, he spends all his time on the beach. But look, her boss went out and said, we'll do it again. We'll do it a different way. And he went out, got rejected again by the Supreme Court. So all these students got taunted with this whole thing about this whole idea. And how unfair that would have been, part of the reason they lost, to the millions and millions of people that had to pay off their student loans. They didn't get it for free. But they were saying it's the same way that they talked about that they talk about abortion.
But if I could just get a yes or no, because your running mate, J.D. Vance, has said that you would veto it if it did come to your desk.
Well, I didn't discuss it with J.D. In all fairness, J.D., and I don't mind if he has a certain view, but I think he was speaking for me, but I really didn't. Look, we don't have to discuss it because...
This is interesting. You can see the pressure that pro-lifers have obviously been putting on Trump. He's now kind of dancing around whether or not he would actually veto a piece of federal abortion restriction legislation if it landed on his desk. This is the impact of pro-lifers having some influence with him, which I think is positive. And he's kind of disclaiming Vance's statement that he wouldn't sign, that he'd veto a national abortion ban. That's kind of a little bit throwing Vance under the bus, frankly. That's very interesting.
She'd never be able to get it, just like she couldn't get student loans. They couldn't get student loans. They didn't even come close to getting student loans. They taunted young people and a lot of other people that had loans. They can never get this approved. So it doesn't matter what she says about going to Congress. Well, wonderful. Let's go to Congress. Do it. But the fact is that for years they wanted to get it out of Congress and out of the federal government, and we did something that everybody said couldn't be done. And now you have a vote of the people on abortion.
Vice President Harris, I want to give you your time to respond, but I do want to ask, would you support any restrictions on a woman's right to an abortion?
I absolutely support reinstating the protections of Roe v. Wade, and as you...
Which basically means no, I don't support a restriction on abortion. And she's just playing on people's ignorance of Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade said that states, or I guess legislatures, could ban abortion in the third trimester, but that they had to have a health exception. And the health exception is so broad, it encompasses essentially any pregnancy. So Harris is saying, I want to reinstate the protections of Roe v. Wade. What she means is she wants 40-week legal abortion.
Rightly mentioned, nowhere in America is a woman carrying a pregnancy to term and asking for an abortion. That is not happening. It's insulting.
It is happening. There are third trimester abortions. There are third trimester abortionists. Like that happens all the time. It's a relatively small percentage of the total number of abortions, but if it's I think late-term abortions I'm not remembering the stat off the top of my head. Look, there are 1 million abortions in America per year. If 1% of them are in the third trimester, again, that's 10,000 of them per year. Okay, so it's more than 1%. I know that. So yeah, these third trimester abortions happen all the time in America. This isn't some freak occurrence.
To the women of America, and understand what has been happening under Donald Trump's abortion bans. Couples.
She's hammering that mess. Donald Trump's abortion bans. Donald Trump's abortion bans.
Who pray and dream of having a family are being denied IVF treatments. What has happened?
No one in America is being denied IVF treatments. And Trump is like desperately wanting to give people IVF. She is so full of baloney.
Happening in our country.
I wish IVF were more restricted. I wish there were more restrictions put on IVF because of the enormous wastage of human life that's involved in the modern practice of IVF. But anyway.
Working people, working women who are working 1 or 2 jobs, who can barely afford childcare as it is, have to travel to another state to get on a plane sitting next to strangers to go and get the health care she needs.
Again, we're just characterizing all abortion as health care, which is a debatable. This is another line of abortion argumentation. Health care means fixing something that is wrong with the human body or keeping the human body in a state of health. That's not what abortion is. Abortion is terminating a healthy bodily process, a natural bodily process of pregnancy and childbirth. So it isn't really healthcare. It's an elective thing, an elective intervention that can involve healthcare repercussions. The healthcare practitioners might be the ones with the skill sets to perform it. It's the process of doing abortions is similar to other kinds of actual healthcare interventions, like removing the body of a child who has died via miscarriage, but it's not healthcare. It's something else.
Barely can afford to do it, and what you are putting her through is unconscionable. And the people of America have not, the majority of Americans believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body.
When you phrase it in that most generalized, the people of America believe in a woman's decisions to make right to make decisions about her own body. Yeah, I believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. I also don't believe in abortion. But also in this super generalized state, I mean, I don't believe in a woman's right to make the decision to snort cocaine or shoot herself up with heroin. Like, I don't believe in people's ability to do anything with their bodies, man or woman. So she's there. This is classic pro-choice argumentation to phrase it in the most generalized term possible that no one would disagree with. But really what they're arguing for is very specific things.
And that is why in every state where this issue has been on the ballot, in red and blue states both, the people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I have to respond. Another lie. It's another lie. I have been a leader on IVF, which is fertilization. The IVF, I have been.
Unfortunately, yes, Trump has been wildly pro-IVF in ways that I think are outlandishly terrible. Basically, no hesitation about the moral problems involved with IVF, talking about a proposal to have the federal government pay for or force insurance companies to cover IVF, which is just, from an ethical and fiscal point of view, is insane.
A leader. In fact, when they got a very negative decision on IVF from the Alabama courts, I saw the people.
The Alabama courts just said that if you wander into an IVF clinic and negligently, if the IVF clinic lets people wander into the back of their clinic and destroy embryos, that the IVF clinic can be sued for wrongful death. That's it. It wasn't even an anti-IVF thing. It was just saying IVF clinics have to exercise basic care. And if they're not, they can be sued as wrongful death rather than destruction of property or something, because embryos are living human organisms.
Of Alabama and the legislature 2 days later voted it in. I've been a leader.
And that was a terrible bill by the Alabama legislature. It was idiotic, just to insulate IVF clinics basically from litigation for something like that.
On it. They know that, and everybody else knows it. I have been a leader on fertilization, IVF. And the other thing,
this is true on Trump's part. They are lying about Trump's position on IVF.
should ask
I wish he had a different position on IVF, but yes, they are lying about Trump's position on IVF.
Will she allow abortion in the 8th month, 9th month, 7th month?
Come on.
Okay, would you do that?
Yeah, that is a legit question. They allow it with a health exception. It's totally legit.
Why don't you ask her that question?
Why don't you
That's
answer
the
the
problem.
question? Would you
because
veto?
under Roe v. Wade,
Answer the question, would you veto?
you could do abortions in the 7th month, the 8th month, the 9th
That's
month,
not true.
and probably.
That is true. It's with the health exception. The health exception that's so broad that it's a meaningless exception. Every pregnancy implicates maternal health, familial health. The familial health is right there in Doe versus Bolton, Roe v. Wade's companion case, saying that if your familial health is adversely impacted by a pregnancy, which I don't even know what that means. Well, I mean, I do know what it means. My family dynamic will be upset if I have this baby. Then yes, you can get an abortion. Yes, you can do abortions 7th, 8th, 9th month via Roe v. Wade. There are famous doctors nationwide who do third trimester abortions. It was their whole career.
After birth. Just look at the former governor of Virginia. The governor of Virginia said we put the baby aside and then we determine what we want to do with the baby.
President Trump, thank you.
We're going to turn now to immigration and border security. We know it's an issue that's important.
All right. So there you go. That's the Trump and Harris debate when it comes to abortion. And gosh, yeah, just a lot to work with there. All right. That'll do it for us at Right to Life Central California. Talk to you next time.